Okay, good to see you all. This is our Gompa Ropsel class, the text composed by Lama Khapa as a commentary to Chandrakirti's Bhajamakavatara, which is itself a commentary on Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom, which itself is a commentary on the Buddhist Prajnaparamita Sutras, Nagarjuna's expression of that. So we're going to begin with some prayers. First of all, to verbally and with a remembering consciousness to try to set up a positive motivation to sort of draw us into to a virtuous mind, so that the whole practice of listening and contemplating on the teachings becomes virtuous. So, Sangye Chodang Soki Chognam Changchu Badu Dagni Kyapsu Chi Dagi Chunen Gipe Sognam Ki Dola Penchis Dange Rupasho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. That refers to the Bodhisattva Aryas. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, the collections of merit and wisdom, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Drola Pencher. Drola means migrators, rather than, it's sort of a synonym of sentient beings, but not exactly. Sangye Churang Soki Chogam Jangchu Batu Dagni Kyapsuchi Dagi Chunen Gipe Dognam Ki Rola Penche Sangye Drupa Sho. And then a short mandala offering in order to accumulate merit to be successful with our intended motivation of listening to the teachings. By offering this ground, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy a pure realm. And then request to our primordial guru, so to speak, the Dharmakaya, O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be subdued, those to be trained. So you can think of as Lama Zopa would often say, when he taught, he felt that he wasn't really teaching. It was Lama Yeshe teaching through him, sort of like the Dharmakaya of his guru being released into him and through his voice. So you can think the same thing. Idam Guru Rana Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay. So after, we'll do a little meditation to set motivation, as we often do. And then afterwards, we'll recite the foundation of good qualities, as this is the beginning of turns out I think this would be 7 classes rather than 8, because we'll end just before 6 classes. Okay, right? If you count the last, there'll be 6 more. Okay, before Christmas. Okay, so sit comfortably. Spine straight. Body relaxed, mind relaxed. And place your attention, your mindfulness, on the breathing in front. First, you have to pay attention to it, recognize it, and then once it's recognized, you can hold it with the mental factor mindfulness. Because mindfulness or memory only takes an object which has already been realized as its object. Keep that respiration in mind, recognizing when it's coming in, when it's going out, whether it's long, whether it's short. And if you like to add the number of respirations, counting a cycle of in and out as one, and so forth. Let go of all other mental activity. Be particularly cognizant of the moments when the breathing changes from an inhalation to an exhalation, and likewise from an exhalation to an inhalation. Those points where the breathing becomes very subtle and there's more chance of the mind taking advantage to multitask and think about something else. And with the mind somewhat subdued, other thoughts perhaps subdued because you have relinquished attending to them, paying attention to them by keeping the breathing in mind. Now turn your attention to the mental consciousness, a much more subtle object than the respiration. That within which you think, you plan, you remember, you make observations of the present, so the different conceptual thoughts could be divided that way into those that are thinking about the past, the present, or the future. There may be emotional states that are present. If you're a little bit irritated or ebullient, maybe, on the other hand, happy. Maybe you feel pain in the body. All of these are events within the mental that may be in the senses and in the body sense, but that the mental consciousness is aware of. Their mental events. Recognize that all of them are taking place within the conventional clear light nature of your mind, which is its lack of obstruction to the arisal or reabsorption of events into the mind. Try to focus on the space between the thoughts, or if you are already familiar with the reasoning, you can, while even focusing on one of the events in your mind, whether it's a memory or a conceptual thought about the present, recognize that its very presence indicates that the mind is clear light by nature. It's off the mental consciousness offers no hindrance to that arisal of that thought or the presence of that thought. So rather than focusing on the thought, focus on the substratum of the mind within which it's arising, and let those different thoughts subside. Your occasional conception of your body, seemingly irrefutably looming there, that into your mental consciousness is no different than the other events. You can relinquish your attention to it by recognizing that the appearance of it is appearing within the clear light nature of your mind. And as you do so, you're beginning to reach a state where the thoughts, conceptual content that had its own continuity, the perception of your body, the perception of a sense of I, and so forth, all of these begin to fade back, reabsorb into the mental consciousness, and you're left with your mental image of the clear light nature of the mind, the conventional clear light nature of the mind. All of the garbage of this life, to use a term in political discourse in the last couple of days, all the garbage of this life, all the thoughts, the preconceptions, the worries, the anticipations, all of them disappear into this continuing clear light nature of the mind, which is our conventional Buddha nature, the developmental Buddha nature. The fact that we have this clear light nature of the mind, conventional clear light nature of the mind, implies that we can develop qualities and reabsorb and eliminate faulty states of mind. We can reprogram our consciousness, overcome habits that ordinary people find very difficult to overcome, habits from their childhood, or low self-esteem, or pride, or tendency to be naughty and be self-interested and so forth. We can reprogram our mind to eliminate these faults. And the fact that we can recognize that now is because we have this auspicious moment that the Buddha praised in so many sutras, that is sometimes referred to as a life of leisure and endowment. Very rare to find. Rare enough to find a life in the upper realms, let alone a human rebirth, let alone one where the Dharma still exists. The Buddha's turned the wheel of Dharma. The Dharma still exists. There are still communities of benefactors and like-minded practitioners, sort of fellow Sangha members, so to speak, that we have healthy body and mind, healthy enough. We have enough resources. We don't have to go begging on the street. And we can use this life that is so rare to find, one in which the Buddha's teaching is available and that we have interest in pursuing it and faith, a certain amount of faith in it, or at least hope. We can use this for higher aims that ordinary people, maybe some religious people of other religions have something similar, the thought to transcend the ordinary affairs of this lifetime from a Buddhist perspective to achieve either liberation, nirvana, to end the constant cycle of rebirth once and for all for oneself, or as the Buddha advised for those of intelligence, not to be totally focused on his lesser vehicle teachings that lead to nirvana, but to strive for the Mahayana, the great vehicle that can lead ourselves to the great state of enlightenment and great vehicle that has room to bring all sentient beings into that same state with us. By cultivating the special mind of bodhicitta, the method counterpart to the wisdom of emptiness, like the two wings that are necessary for a bird to fly. It said that to soar to the state of enlightenment, we need to have the two wings of method and wisdom. The supreme method here on the sutra side being bodhicitta. Maybe from the tantra side, there are other more subtle minds of method, illusory body, and so forth. And on the wisdom side, the wisdom of emptiness, that we, unless we had cultivated it in previous lifetimes, it's not something that appears intuitively to our mind. Both of these are explained, method and wisdom are explained in Lama Tsongkhapa's Illumination of the Intention that we're studying. So think, I'm going to participate in the class today in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, each and every one of which has been depthlessly kind to me as mother, numberless lifetimes, one of the most difficult realizations of the Lanrim. They've all been kind even when they weren't mother, when they were strangers, providing the infrastructure for our world, for us to live in. Even when they were enemies, giving me the opportunity to purify negative karma and to practice the Dharma. very precious sentient beings, more precious, more valuable, exceeding even a wish-fulfilling gem that can provide all of the wishes of this lifetime by cherishing sentient beings more than ourselves, taking their interest as paramount. We can fulfill the wishes for future lifetimes. We can fulfill the wishes of achieving liberation or enlightenment. So I think I'm going to participate today, listening, hearing the teachings, contemplating them to develop the wisdom arisen from contemplation. And occasionally when something becomes clear through having heard it, explained, having contemplated it, holding our mind single-pointedly on that understanding to develop the wisdom arisen from meditation. I'm going to participate in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all mother sentient beings. See if you can, through that logic, develop that thought and then hold that single-pointedly. That's our motivation. The determination that I'm going to participate for this reason. I'm going to listen, contemplate, meditate with the aim of achieving enlightenment through the accumulation of the two collections of merit and wisdom for the sake of sentient beings. And then bring your attention back to the present. Good to see you. Hi, Jennifer. Snehi is actually here. Good to see you all. John's here. Good to see you, John. Everyone's interesting. Everyone's in black today. Richard, you're also in black. Well, gray or black?
I think it's actually a very dark red, but black is close enough.
Okay, yeah. Rachel and Karen are the outliers, and Anna are the outliers here, with Richard also saying that maybe his camera doesn't pick up, or my screen doesn't pick up the red in his shirt. So good to see you all. So before we begin, we're going to recite the famous prayer by Lama Khapa, the Foundation of Good Qualities, which our host will put up. So we'll recite in English, referring to the Tibetan. The foundation of all good qualities, all of our spiritual qualities, the foundation of that is the kind and perfect guru. Correctly following the guru is the root of the path. By my clearly seeing this and by applying great effort, please bless me to rely on the guru with great respect. When I have discovered that the precious freedom of this rebirth, this auspicious moment, this life of leisure and endowment, is found only once in a while, once in a great while, and is extremely difficult to find again, besides being greatly meaningful, that we can use it to achieve liberation and enlightenment and develop the various qualities. Once I've discovered that, please bless me to unceasingly generate the mind that takes its essence day and night. This body and life are changing like a water bubble, transient, remembering how quickly they perish and death comes. And after death, just like a shadow follows the body, inextricably. If you're outside, you can't sort of run to the left and do a quick feint and get rid of your shadow. The result of black and white karma follow us. When I have found definite conviction in this, please bless me to be always conscientious in abandoning even the slightest of the collections of shortcomings and in accomplishing all virtuous deeds. So once you recognize this, even to abandon small negative actions, to purify them if they occur, and to accomplish even small virtuous actions in addition to the large ones. When I have recognized the shortcomings of the samsaric perfections, the pleasures and powers and so forth of samsara, the gratification of winning and being loved and being famous and so forth, when I've recognized the shortcomings of them, that there's no satisfaction in enjoying them. They bring no lasting satisfaction. They may temporarily give some joy and winning, but after some time that pales and we need to enjoy something else again. There's no satisfaction in this. They don't slake our thirst for them. They are the door to all suffering, just like taking rebirth is the door to suffering. They are untrustworthy. They change, they rise, they fall, and so forth. Once I recognize that, please bless me to generate a strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Through my being led by this pure thought of renunciation, working for liberation, with great mindfulness, alertness, and conscientiousness, please bless me to make the keeping of the pratimoksha vows, either of a lay person or as an ordained person, the root of the teachings, my essential practice. But then, just as I've fallen into the sea of samsara, I'm immersed in the sea of samsara, so all mother migrating beings are exactly the same situation. We're immersed in this ocean of cyclic existence with no refuge in sight, no land that we can go to, no beams of of the ship to hold on to. By my seeing this, please bless me to train in supreme bodhicitta, which bears the responsibility of freeing migrating beings. But if I were to develop only mere bodhicitta, wishing bodhicitta, without familiarizing myself, without practicing the three types of morality, Mahayana threefold morality of abstaining from negative actions, accumulating virtuous dharmas, benefiting sentient beings, without familiarizing, without actualizing myself, these three kinds of morality through the practice of the six perfections, I cannot achieve enlightenment alone, just with the wishing bodhicitta. By seeing this well, please bless me to keep the vows of the bodhisattvas, the offspring of the conquerors, with fervent effort. By having pacified distractions to wrong objects and correctly analyzing the meaning of reality, please bless me to quickly generate within my mind stream the unified path of calm abiding and special insight. So those talking especially the sutra path. But when I become a suitable vessel for the practice of Tantra by training in the common path, please bless me to immediately enter the holy gateway of the fortunate beings, the supreme of all vehicles, the Vajrayana. So Lama Tsongkhapa himself, great being who emphasized in the Galupa tradition the keeping of morality and the Vinaya and everything, still emphasizing the importance of the Vajrayana, that when you were to be suitably trained in the common path here meaning the paths of the beings of the three scopes, the lower scope working for the happiness of next life, the intermediate scope working to escape from cyclic existence, the higher scope, the Mahayana scope, working to achieve enlightenment through the sutra path for the benefit of sentient beings. When you've trained in that, especially in the three fundamental aspects of the path of renunciation, bodhicitta, and the wisdom of emptiness, bless me to immediately enter, not to put off, because it's so rare that the ability to enter into the Vajrayana occurs. Then at that time, having entered into the path, the Vajrayana path, the basis of accomplishing the two attainments, common cities and the supreme city of enlightenment, the basis for those is the keeping of my vows and samayas, purely words of honor. When I have gained effortless conviction in this, please bless me to protect them even at the cost of my life. So the tantric equivalent of keeping the pratimoksha vows, as was earlier mentioned. When I have realized exactly the vital points of the two stages, the generation stage and the completion stage, which are the essence of the tantric sets, and I'm enjoying the yoga of 4 sessions with effort, without being distracted, please bless me to accomplish these in accordance with the teachings of the holy beings. Finally, a prayer. May the virtuous friends who reveal the noble path and the spiritual practitioners, such as our classmates and others who are practicing, who correctly accomplish it, may they have long lives, and bless me to pacify completely the collections of outer and inner obstacles. In all my lives, may I never be separated from perfect gurus. May I enjoy the magnificent Dharma, the magnificence of the Dharma. And by completing the qualities of the paths and grounds, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. Okay. So, what do you think? Lama Tsongkhapa was onto something there. I recite that prayer less frequently than the similar prayer in Lama Chopa, which I recite every day, that was composed by the first Panchen Lama, or sometimes called the fourth Panchen Lama. We've talked before. So, any thoughts before we begin? Any questions, comments, or observations? How are we doing? Nothing. Okay. That can be good. That can be. Okay, so we have our usual assortment of continents here, except I think, I'm not sure why Nadine and Mikhail, Doris, do you know we're there?
I just sent, excuse me, I just sent Nadine a message just in case she forgot.
Yeah, she may have not recognized that the time change or whatever. So, okay, so I'm going to where we're going to begin today. Oops, went too fast here. We're going to review a little bit of where we got to at this point. Okay, so if you have the if you have Jeffrey Hopkins' text, it'll be on starting on page 238. And in Thupten Jinpa's translation, I don't know the page number, but it starts, the following passage, which I will explain, appears here in the commentary. Does anyone know what page number that is for those who have a written text? Paul, you seem to be on top of these things. Okay.
Book's on 236, 237, so I don't know which of them.
Okay. So around there, the following passage, which I will explain, appears here in the commentary. This is from Thupten Jinpa's translation. So
he's right, 236.
236. Okay. So the segment that he is referring to in Chandrakirti's auto commentary, right? So we're talking about one of the verses of the Majjhima Karikas, the verses, and the Basham, the commentary, in paraphrase says something like this. A few examples of dependent origination, such as reflections in a mirror, echoes, and so on, do appear as false to those ridden with ignorance, or as Jeffrey Hopkins says more literally, to those who have ignorance. It's Marikpa Dang Dempa, I think it is in the Tibetan here. Marikpa Dang Dempa. Usually that just means those who have ignorance. So those who have ignorance, a few examples of dependent origination do appear as false. So, reflections of a face in a mirror, or and so forth, or echo and so forth, we can recognize that they are false, that they appear to be something like say the actual face, but they're actually empty of being that face. That's not usually called emptiness. That's called the absence of, the being empty of that is not fully qualified emptiness, of which we refer to the emptiness of inherent existence. So a few examples of dependent origination, such as reflections in a mirror, echoes, and so on, do appear as false to those who have ignorance. Yet some examples, such as the blue color of material form, another example, the mind itself, feelings, and so on, appear to those who have ignorance as real. That means as being inherently existing the way that they appear. The true nature that is the mode of being of all phenomena never appears to those who have ignorance. As Jinpa says, never appears, or as Jeffrey Hopkins translates, the nature that is the mode of being of phenomena does not appear in any way to those having ignorance. Therefore, such intrinsic nature and those things that are false, even on the conventional level, are not conventional truths. So this is a reason Lama Tsongkhapa is bringing this up. So he's commenting on Chandrakirti's commentary. So it sounds a little bit problematic, the last statement. Therefore, such intrinsic nature and those things that are false, even on the conventional level, are not conventional truths. So that would imply, say, for instance, something that's false on the conventional level for ordinary beings would be like the reflection of a face. Hi, Nadine. Good to see you. Were you confused about the time?
Yes, exactly. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. Doris sent out a message. So say the reflection of a face is said to be false. So false on the conventional level. So the statement seems to say that would not be a conventional truth, the reflection of a face in a mirror. Yet on the other hand, you would think, yeah, that's a conventional truth, isn't it? So anyway, that's the problematic quotation here. We'd gone over this last time very briefly. So the phrase, quote, a few examples is translated as some in Naxo's version, which reads better. So this is just Lama Tsongkhapa's mentioning that the translation of the Basham was done originally, and you can see on the note on the bottom of Jeffrey Hopkins' page there, he says, Naxo Lotsowa Sultim Gyalwa was we've run across him many times. Naxo was his famous translator. Lotsowa is is the Tibetan, sort of using the Sanskrit words. Lotsowa means what in Sanskrit, John? Do you know? Is John still here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it isn't supposed to translate loka chakshu or world, the eye of the world.
Lotsowa is supposed to be so the word Lotsowa is not a Sanskrit word?
No, it's not. There's a whole debate around this, but that's as far as and I never really looked into it. I bet Paul has something more to say, but I believe it is not itself a Sanskrit word. No, it's supposed to be a rendering of loka chakshu.
Yeah, it's like an abbreviation, like lo chana, because the cha usually is for the cha in Sanskrit. So it'd be lo cha, lo. What would it be? Lo cha wa. What would just be the nominalizer? So it's lo cha as an abbreviation of loka chakshu is what they. I mean, it's people hypothesize. Nobody really knows where it came
Right.
from.
Very, very interesting. I was not aware of that. I might have sounds somewhat familiar. So the Tibetan word Lotsowa we generally refer to as translator. So it is, as John and Paul are explaining, it is referring to a Sanskrit word that's referring to a translator's as the eye of the world. Kind of like when we talk about the prayers at the end of the class, when we talk about the the gurus who are our eyes for understanding the scriptures and so forth. So very, very interesting. Thank you for that. So Lama Tsongkhapa is just mentioning that in Naxo's translation, that he likes his translation of few examples as translating as some. Anyway, Lama Tsongkhapa says that reads a little bit better. That's just an aside, okay? So continuing sort of the gist of the comment here, reflections in a mirror, echoes, and so on do appear as false. That statement refers to these perceptions as being erroneous, right? Reflections in a mirror. These perceptions are wrong perceptions. Or as Lama Tsongkhapa, as Jeffrey translates, let's see here. Since the reflection of a face is a falsity that is, oh no. So that reflections and so forth, though false, appear is the false form of false appearance to which Chandrakirti is referring when he says some dependent arisings such as reflections, echoes, and so on, and so forth, appear to be false even to those who have ignorance. So he's saying this is the coarse form of false appearance. So when we talk about emptiness, all phenomena appear to be inherently existent. That is a false appearance, whereas they are not inherently existent. But there's a grosser form of falsity that takes place that is recognizable by ordinary people, like ourselves, that certain things appear to be true in the world, but we can understand them just by worldly knowledge as being false, like the reflection of a face and so forth. This falsehood is, Jimpa's translation, this is a falsehood in the sense of something appearing as a face, but at the same time being devoid of being such, devoid of being a face. So emptiness of true existence in that context. So one has to understand Jimpa's translation here is a little bit problematic. The Tibetan term is a dentong. He's translating it as emptiness of true existence. Dentong just literally means emptiness, the lack of being true, emptiness of being true. In some cases, that can refer to the gross thing, so that the appearance of a face is empty of being a true face. Just in the as an actual face, it can be referring to that. It doesn't have to be the emptiness of true existence, as Jimpa is translating here. So emptiness of truth in that context refers to its lack of being a real face as it appears to be. It does not mean that the reflection's emptiness of true existence in the sense of its lack of existing by way of intrinsic characteristics. Therefore, even when the reflection is established as the absence of being a real face, so even when you realize that, there is no contradiction at all in deeming it to be real from the perspective of a concealer, the mind that grasps it to exist through its intrinsic characteristic. Okay, again, let's see what how Jeffrey translates that. Since a reflection of a face is a falsity that is a composite of the two, what are the two things? Appearing to be a face, yet being empty of that face. Its emptiness of truth, what did we say here that Jimpa was translating? So emptiness of true existence, and that's emptiness of truth.
Dendong, I think you said, George. Dendong.
Yeah. Dendong, right. So its emptiness of truth, to which Chandrakirti is referring, is its emptiness of truth as a face, and does not have the meaning of the reflections being empty of truth in the sense of it not being established by way of its own character. Therefore, a reflection is a thing such that, although it is established as being empty of being a face, there is no contradiction at all in its being true in the perspective of an obscuring consciousness, samvriti, or the Tibetan kunso, apprehending it to be established by way of its own character. So in other words, when we talk about conventional truths, as you remember, Jeffrey Hopkins' sort of take on that, it says truth for a jerk, right? Truth for an obscuring consciousness. So that obscuring consciousness can understand that it's not a real face, but it can still be in the face of that jerk mind, our obscuring consciousness, it still appears to be inherently existent. Hence, a reflection is an obscurational truth. And Jeffrey Hopkins has, in parentheses, despite Chandrakirti's seeming to say that it is not. He wasn't saying that it is, that a reflection is not an obscurational truth, is not a conventional truth. Reflections and so forth are conventional truths, but he was referring to the fact, just on the conventional level, that it is empty of being a face, and so therefore it is seeming, from that point of view, it is not it's not a conventional truth. You might say it's a wrong conventional truth, so it's not a correct conventional truth, because his reference is to its not being a truth as a face for those who know about mirrors. How does that sound? How does that sit with you? Stephen, how do you feel? Making sense, or is it?
Yeah, it does. Thanks to your guidance and going through this so
Laboriously.
meticulously.
Sorry about.
I think it makes sense.
Okay. Richard, how you feel? Is it okay? Okay. KT? You
Just
lost?
wondering, why is Chandrakirti and Tsong so, are they trying to like just really break down the conventional in as many aspects as possible for us, that, or why are they so caught in these details, like so much? I'm thinking about like reflections. Okay, they're not real, but they're there in conventional reality. But why are we looking at it so deeply?
Well, because they are. This is our fate as people who are not so old that we need to eat bone soup. We're actually gnawing the bones, right?
Okay.
We're looking at these details of what Chandrakirti said, which other people said, oh, looks like Chandrakirti said that reflections are not conventional truths. But what he was referring to was that on the conventional level, a reflection is not a correct conventional truth, right? Remember when we talked earlier about the division of conventional truths, or that there are some people say that there are correct conventional truths like trees and houses and horses and so forth, and that there are false conventional truths, or like reflection of a face in a mirror and so forth, or the appearance of a blue snow mountain and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of it appears that Chandrakirti was referring to that, and Lama Tsongkhapa is just clearing that up.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So we're not at the. So I remember a couple of years ago, one of my friends gave me some cartons of bone broth. So we're not, we're actually gnawing the bones here. We haven't gotten to the point where our teeth are so bad, our analytical faculties are so bad that we have to drink the bone broth. Okay, so then continuing in Jimba's translation, the statement here in the commentary cited above, that mirror reflections are not conventional truths, should be understood as follows. Okay. So in Jeffrey Hopkins' translation, which I find, as we'll see in the next couple of paragraphs, very, very subtle difficult points. Even when Geshe Zopa taught, he didn't go into much detail about it. It was just that it was the source of points of debate for the Geshes. So very, very subtle points. So Jeffrey's translation says, for what Jimpa just said here, the statement here in the commentary cited above that mirror reflections are not conventional truths should be understood as follows. Jeffrey says, therefore, Chandrakirti's statement that the reflection is not an obscurational truth, or as Jimpa says, conventional truth, is in consideration of the following. Okay, so Jimpa says, from the perspective of the worldly conventions of those versed in language, something like a mirror image is false in the sense that it is not a real face. Right? It is a falsity in that it is not a real face. You can still say it exists, but from the worldly perspective, it is a falsity in the sense that it is not a real face. And in that sense, it is not a conventional truth. Or you could say it is not a correct conventional truth. And Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, however, it can't be the case that a mirror image is not accepted to be a conventional truth at all, because it's defined in the line in the verse that we already because of Helene coming, it seems like months ago. Earlier, there was the verse 623 that began to talk about that which is seen by correct vision is ultimate truth. That which is seen by false vision is conventional truth. All phenomena are either conventional truths or are either conventional truths or ultimate truths, right? So it comes down to be correct vision and false vision. So he's quoting the last line of that verse is, that which is seen by false vision is conventional truth. It is taught that. As Jeffrey translates, a reflection of a face from the point of view of a worldly person trained in language, and hence, let me read the whole sentence there. Where did it start? It's a long sentence. Therefore, Chandrakirti's statement that a reflection is not an obscurational truth, which is this statement in his Bhashyam that's we're trying to figure out, is in consideration that concerning reflection of a face, for instance, its being a face is false in the perspective of a conventional consciousness of worldly persons trained in language, and hence is not an obscurational truth relative to, and is not an obscurational truth relative to that. Or in other words, a reflection of a face is not a truth as a face in the perspective of that consciousness. How could it be, or as Jimpa said, it is not the case. How could it be that that reflection is not posited as an obscurational truth described in that verse, the fourth line of verse 623, objects of perception of the false are obscurational truths. So here, this is in Jeffrey's translation, this is page 239. So there is a note here. Let's see. Okay, C, so B and C. So B is just those persons do not have the gross level of ignorance apprehending a reflection of a face to exist the way it appears to be a face. And C is just a note about the what Jeffrey feels is a correct translation of the Tibetan, and so not so relevant to us here. Okay, so then this is now getting to a very, very tricky part. So put on your thinking pants. Do you have your thinking pants on, David? Okay, put on your big boy pants. So Jimpa's translation says, if in contrast, or as Jeffrey says, otherwise. So that means if it were contradictory for something to be a conventional truth, because it lacks true existence on the conventional level, this would violate many presentations. So what is he talking about here? Jeffrey's translating. Otherwise, if it were contradictory for something to be an obscurational truth, conventional truth, if it does not exist as a truth for a conventional consciousness, this would contradict the following, or as Jimpa said, this would violate, what did he say? This would violate many presentations. So what is he talking about here?
That's a terrible double negative. I'm not
Yeah.
liking it.
So I think I know, I'm sure there's other people in the class that don't like double negatives, but Doris has expressed her frustration with them on several occasions. So let's see what's talking about here. The way that Jeffrey translates, otherwise, if it were to be contradictory for something to be an obscurational truth, if it does not exist as a truth for a conventional consciousness. And then again, he says this would contradict, or Jimpa says this would violate. So it's nice to get a little variety for the Gelwa there. So what does that mean? If something to be, if it were contradictory for something to be an obscurational truth. So we're talking about, or conventional truth. So Chandrakirti's statement seems to say that the reflection of a face in a mirror is not a conventional truth, right? But what he's meaning is something sort of at a gross level. It's not a correct conventional truth from the worldly perspective. It's a wrong conventional truth. It's a falsity. It doesn't exist as an actual face. So if it were to be contradictory for something to be a conventional truth, or as Jeffrey says, an obscurational truth, if it does not exist as a truth for a conventional consciousness, that means it would have to be a conventional truth. It would have to be true for a conventional mind. Does that make sense? If that's what we're talking about. If that were the case, that would violate the following statements. And now we get into some tricky things here. Yeah, okay. So the first statement is Chandrakirti's statement that establishment of an object by way of his own character does not exist in conventional terms. Or as Jimpa says, such as the statement that there is no existence by virtue of intrinsic characteristics, or as Jeffrey says, own characteristic, even on the conventional level. So what's that referring to? Some of you may know, some of you may say, I have no idea what he's talking about. This is something that we've talked about before. Paul, do you remember? There is no existence by virtue of intrinsic characteristics, even on the conventional level.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I know what that means in general. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not remembering the previous context though.
So, yeah. Oh, Doris, you know?
I think it's referring to Svatantrika.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Okay. Way to go, Doris. So for Svatantrika, right? On the conventional level, phenomena are intrinsically existent. Or in this case, as is the term that's being used, is existing by way of their own characteristic, or existing, how did Jimpa translate it, as by virtue of intrinsic characteristics. Lama Tsongkhapa, following Chandrakirti, says that there is no existence of, by virtue of intrinsic characteristics, ultimately, of course, which the Svatantrika agree, the phenomena are not inherently existent ultimately, but they say that on the conventional level, phenomena are intrinsically existent, are inherently existent on the conventional level. That is true, which is one of the reasons for calling them Svatantrikas, one of their special features. So, as Jimpa says, this would violate many presentations, such as the statement that there is no existence by virtue of intrinsic characteristics, even on the conventional level. Or as Jeffrey says, even in the conventional terms. So this kind of like, you could kind of say, okay, yeah, okay. But why? Why is that? So I find Jeffrey's note here, well, first of all, this first note is talking about on page 239. That's where we at, right? 239 in Jeffrey's translation, right? He says, note D is right at this point when he said Chandrakirti's statement that establishment of an object by way of its own character does not exist even on the conventional level. So that's something that Lama Tsongkhapa and Chandrakirti have said previously, as Doris noted when we were talking about the Svatantrika, that from the Svatantrika point of view, phenomena do have an intrinsic characteristic conventionally, but ultimately they lack that. Okay, so here this note D says this is referring to verse 636, which will come a little bit later in our text. And I didn't put it down here. Let me see if I put it here. Yeah, Jimpa's translation of verse 636. So that we're just around verse 623 now. So 636 in this sequence of the text, there's quite a bit of commentary between the verses. Later, you'll go one verse after another without much commentary. But so this is still a ways off. In Jimpa's translation, verse 636 says, you can check this in your own text there. In the context of suchness, so on the ultimate level, certain reasoning disallows arising from self or from something other. And that same reasoning disallows them on the conventional level too. That same reasoning disallows them on the conventional level too. So by what means then is your arising established? That's a verse that's coming later. Jeffrey's translation of that says, through that reasoning, through which it is seen on the occasion of analyzing suchness, that production from self and other are not reasonable, it is seen that production is not reasonable even in conventional terms. That's the line that's in question here. It's not reasonable in conventional terms, or as Jimpa said in his own translation, disallows them on the conventional level too. If so, through what reasoning would your production be established? So this is Chandrakirti debating again with some opponents about whether there is a truly existent arising and so forth. Okay, so this is the context of what's being talked about here. So in Jimpa's translation, if in contrast it were contradictory for something to be a conventional truth because it lacks true existence on the conventional level, this would violate many presentations, such as the statement in verse 636 that there is no existence by virtue of the intrinsic characteristics, even on the conventional level. Okay. And so why it does that will become maybe clear in a second. And, or, Jipper says, or that negating true existence and establishing the absence of true existence are all undertaken on the conventional level, and so on. So Jimba is saying that the way he's translating it, if something would have to be, if it were contradictory for something to be a conventional truth because it lacks true existence on the conventional level, that would violate many things, like the presentation of the establishment, the negation of true existence, and the establishment of the absence of true existence. So what are those two things? Establishing the absence of true existence, or the emptiness of true existence. The negation of true existence. Is that something that we engage in? Do we negate true existence?
I mean, we negate it when we're performing ultimate analysis, right?
Right. Ultimate analysis, negating true existence and establishing the absence of true existence are all undertaken on the conventional level. So they're done, the logic that negates true existence that we utilize when we have a union of common abiding and special insight, that logic is all done on the conventional level. So that negation of true existence is undertaken on the conventional level, or as Jeffrey's translates, all presentations done in conventional terms, tane du chepe namshak tamche, including all refutations of true establishment, true existence, and proofs or establishments of no true existence. So there are two different things. When you negate true existence and when you establish the non-true existence. So again, very, very, very subtle difference. So here is the important note that I think, sort of the statements before it is that how does that contradict? How is that even connected to one another? So here in Jeffrey Hopkins' note, I think is sort of the explanation of that. So this is note E in Jeffrey Hopkins' text on the bottom of page 239 and following on to 240. That's the way the notes go. So the note says, if it were contradictory, I'll change my glasses here, got my reading glasses. If it were contradictory for something to be an obscurational truth, a conventional truth, if it does not exist as a truth for an obscuring consciousness, that's the premise here, right? This would mean that all obscurational truths, all conventional truths, must be truths for an obscuring consciousness. They have to be correct conventional truths. And in the absence of any criterion for removing any of these that are truths for an obscuring consciousness from the class of obscurational truths, you could put that in brackets. You have to think about what he's talking about there, whether in the absence of any criterion for removing any of these, because sometimes we have reasons to remove certain things from consideration. this would amount to saying that whatever exists for an obscuring consciousness is an obscurational truth. This would amount to saying, or you could say this is paramount to saying, or tantamount to saying. Do you know the word tantamount? Where does that come from, Stephen? Tantamount.
I think it comes from Latin. It just means at the same level.
Yeah. The dictionaries say from Italian, but that's probably, you're right, probably coming. Tanta means what? Tanto?
Same.
Same. And so this would amount to, or it be tantamount to saying that whatever exists for an obscuring consciousness, that means whatever exists for ignorance, like a lot of things exist for ignorance that are not true, right? For instance, true existence itself exists for ignorance. Ignorant mind believes that phenomena exist the way that they appear as truly existent, as inherently existent. So this would be amount to saying that whatever exists for an obscuring consciousness, an ignorant consciousness, is an obscurational truth. Since ignorance, an obscuring consciousness, takes the establishment of objects by way of their own character to exist, such establishment would have to be an obscurational truth. If something is an obscurational truth, or other way of translating conventional truth, if something is a conventional truth, does it exist? Does it necessarily exist? Luis, what do you think? If something is a conventional truth, does it necessarily exist?
Sure, as a conventional truth, it must exist.
Right, because all existence are either conventional truths or ultimate truths. So conventional truths exist. So if such establishment would have to be an obscurational truth, would have to be a conventional truth. That means it would have to exist. Similarly, if inherent existence existed conventionally, it would be impossible to say that the refutation of inherent existence, it would be impossible to say that the refutation of inherent existence and the proof of its opposite are done conventionally. If inherent existence existed conventionally. So Lama Tsongkhapa's position and Chandrakirti's position is that inherent existence does not exist conventionally. Okay, so how is this fitting with your minds? How are we doing? Oops, gotta be careful. I think this was just a little ladybug on my face here. I'm a little bit wary the last couple of weeks. I got bitten by a wasp under my arm last week. So,
Brother George, did you want to take a break at some point? You were taking
yeah. Maybe we'll take a break in a second. I just want to see how this is fitting with people. Is this making sense what we're talking about here? Subtle point, especially as I think elucidated by Jeffrey's note here, which I assume was his questioning Lamas in pursuit of what was the connection between these statements. How does one follow on the other? He doesn't mention who he was questioning. He may have come up with the logic by himself, but in Thupten Jinpa's translation, there's no explanation whatsoever. It just says, if in contrast, it were contradictory for something to be a conventional truth because it lacks true existence on the conventional level, this would violate many presentations, such as the statement that there is no existence by virtue of intrinsic characteristics, even on the conventional level. We've dealt with that already. Or that negating true existence and establishing the absence of true existence are all undertaken on the conventional level, and so on. Therefore, the assertion that such things as mirror images, recognized as erroneous even by ordinary everyday cognition, are not conventional truths, but are mere conventionalities, reflects an apparent failure to properly understand the following points. The exhaustive nature of the twofold division of truth. This is where we had ended in previous classes. That means that all phenomena, when it says exhaustive nature, that all phenomena are either conventional truths or ultimate truths. There's no third truth that's exhaustive, that covers all cases. And the distinction between the differentiation of truth and falsity from the perspective of the world and from the perspective of the Madhyamaka's differentiation of truth and falsity. So to say that, as Jimpa says, therefore the assertion that such things as mirror images, which are recognized as erroneous even by ordinary everyday cognition, are not conventional truths, but are, quote, mere conventionalities, saying that they are not conventional truths. That's shows that one hasn't understood these essential facts about the fact that all phenomena are either conventional truths or ultimate truths, and that there's a difference between the conventional meaning of true and false, like the true that a mirror image is not a true face, and the Madhyamika explanation of what is true and false, meaning that for something to be true, it has to exist the way that it appears, right? So I'll just read what Jeffrey translated for that, and then we'll take a little break. So Jeffrey translated here, therefore claims stating that objects such as reflections, which even ordinary worldly consciousnesses understand to be mistaken, the claims that they are not obscurational truths, that they are not conventional truths, but they are, quote, mere conventionalities, when in fact they are both. So that's a fact that we have to understand here. It was coming up when we were talking about the three persons, coming up in the next couple of verses. When we say that they are not conventional truths, they're not obscurational truths, but are mere conventionalities, when in fact they are both. So the appearance of a face, the reflection of a face and so forth, is also a mere conventionality, but it is a conventional truth. So the statements that they are not conventional truths, they're not obscurational truths, but are mere conventionalities alone, appears to be the talk of those who have not formed understanding concerning, and these 2 points that we just read Jimpa's translation, the definite enumeration of the two truths, there are only two truths, and the understanding concerning truth and falsity relative to the world, and truth and falsity posited from the proponents of the middle way, the Madhyamikas. Okay, a lot to think about there. Even when Geshe Zoba taught this section, he didn't go into much detail. It was like for him, having debated the Dalai Lama in the Geshe exams, these are the kind of questions that were you would opposed to one another, this kind of point. He didn't mention that, but that's my take on this. So let's take a little break. If you want to get a cup of tea, or if you need to go to the bathroom, we will resume in a couple of minutes. There we go.
Yes.
We're back in session here. So those of you who went to get a cup of tea, scurry back. Okay. So that section particularly murky, but if you see, I think with the help of Jeffrey Hopkins' note on the bottom of whatever that was, page 240, is that it? Or the bottom of
I think it's 239.
239, the note E, which continues onto page 240, the way that the notes work in these word processing programs. Okay, so let's continue now with Thupten Jinpa's translation. So this is essentially where we were going to start today, but I think the fact that the little review hopefully was useful, because it wasn't really completely clear from before. So in Thupten Jinpa's translation, the text continues, and I'll get a question for Paul first, or a statement.
Oh yeah, no, visual. I was just I was trying to understand why this is an important distinction that Tsongkhapa is making, and I'm wondering if I have it right. Is it because he's trying to preserve conventional valid cognition, right? That he's trying to say that Chandrakirti says there's a difference between there's a difference between a mirage and actual water.
Right.
Right. And that he's arguing against people who are saying there's no difference. It's that things are like an illusion versus things are an illusion. Right? Because I know there are people who want to interpret Madhyamaka and saying, oh, all things lack inherent existence. There's no difference between what appears false and what appears true, that they're equally, completely, and utterly the same.
Non-existent.
Right.
It ultimately non-existent. Yeah, it could be. I myself didn't catch that, but I will go back and look in my own reading to see how that might apply here. Thanks for bringing that up. I thought it was a slightly different point.
Well, I mean, I think that's why there's two things. I think the second point he's making, all right, where he says,
in the note,
yeah, or no, when he's in the main body, where he says, right, Chandrakirti's statement that the establishment of an object by way of its own character does not exist even in conventional terms, and all presentations done in conventional terms include all refutations, truths, and proofs of no, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I think, yeah, you're right in the note, right? Because he's saying, well, when Chandrakirti says, what falsely appears is not a obscurational truth, a conventional truth, and then he qualifies that, right? Because there's 2 points. One is he's saying everything that's not emptiness has to be a conventional truth, but then he also wants to preserve the distinction between something like an echo and an actual sound, or a face and a reflection of a face. Right. And so that it makes me think that distinction, preserving that distinction between a face and a reflection of the face, is being able to posit conventional valid cognition, that when you see that, you can say, no, this is a face, that is not a face.
Okay, so although that's not mentioned here explicitly, I think you're right that all of these different arguments are interwoven, and that one can draw those conclusions also. So let's continue a little bit in Jinpa's text. So the statement, which Jeffrey says Chandrakirti's statement. So this is from the Bhashyam again. Jimpa says, the statement, quote, the true nature that is the mode of being of all phenomena never appears to those ridden with ignorance, or as we said, literally, it says those having ignorance. This also needs to be understood in terms of cognitions tainted by ignorance. So where did that statement come? That was the statement that Chandrakirti made. The true nature that is the mode of being of all phenomena never appears to those with ignorance. That came in Chandrakirti's commentary to one of the verses. So Jimpa's
It's in that paragraph that's on 236.
On page 236, thank you. Yeah. So Jimpa's translation continues, for it is maintained that Aryas who have not yet fully abandoned ignorance do realize suchness, emptiness, through direct perception. It is maintained that Aryas who have not yet fully abandoned ignorance do realize suchness through direct perception. Richard, what does that mean? Is that true? Aryas who have not yet fully abandoned ignorance realize suchness through direct perception?
Yes, yes, it does. It is true.
Okay, who is that talking about? What kind of Aryas have not fully abandoned ignorance?
Those are Aryas who haven't yet attained the eighth bhumi, right?
Right, in the Bodhisattva path, or those Arya hearers and solitary realizers who have not yet achieved arhatship. So they still have some of the afflictions in their mind stream. They've not completely abandoned ignorance. Okay. Now, although post-equipoise states of the gnosis of Aryas, it just means they're post-meditation state. So when they're in meditative equipoise, when they arise from that and they open their eyes and things appear to them, their wisdom consciousness, their gnosis of Aryas on the learner stages. What does that mean, the learner stages? David, do you know? Did I wake you?
No. The first four paths?
Yeah. So they are learner stages, means they are not, Doris is going to hate this, they are not no more learners.
She's not the only one.
No more learners means they've graduated. They've reached the goal. They are either arhats or Buddhas, right? So learners means that they are, like you say, at the first four stages of the five paths of the five. So the first four paths of the five paths.
But Brother George, doesn't it say Aryas on the learner stages? So wouldn't that just be the last two of those?
Yes. Sorry. Yeah, right. Although post-equipoise states of the gnosis of Aryas on the learner stages, so that means that they have the addition of the word Arya means that they've realized emptiness. They've had direct realization of emptiness. So although post-meditative states of the gnosis of Aryas and the learner stages and the views of ordinary beings realizing suchness, since they are tainted by ignorance and its habitual propensities, they do not perceive ultimate truth directly. Yet it is not the case that they do not perceive it at all. Okay, does that pose a problem? It's a little bit difficult to understand what's being said here. So let's look at Jeffrey's translation again. Sometimes I find that's quite illuminating, because especially if this is notes here. So Jeffrey, this is on page 240. just about a paragraph and a half down. Also, then he says Chandrakirti's statement. So this is talking about the statement in the Bhasham that the nature, emptiness, when it says the true, Jimpa says true nature, so that's referring to emptiness, does not appear in any way to those having ignorance. Jimpa had translated as never appears to those having ignorance or those ridden with ignorance. Chandrakirti's statement that the nature emptiness did not appear in any way to those having ignorance is in consideration. So in other words, it's sort of a nuanced statement, is in consideration that emptiness did not appear to consciousness polluted with ignorance. And then he has in parentheses, and is not in consideration of persons having ignorance. So what's the difference between being polluted by ignorance and having ignorance? What do you think, Nadine? Do you have a feeling?
I think maybe polluted by ignorance refers to ordinary beings, and the other one, the bodhisattvas who still have ignorance, but they are on the path.
So Jeffrey's translation, Chandrakirti's statement that the nature emptiness does not appear in any way to those having ignorance is in consideration. It has to be understood in this context that emptiness does not appear to consciousness polluted with ignorance. This is the phrase I want to contrast. Polluted with ignorance as opposed to having ignorance. John, do you see a difference between being, what would it mean to have ignorance
But
and not being polluted by ignorance?
Well, just as we were just discussing, an Arya being having anyone from path of seeing on would have ignorance, or up to the stage of no more learning would have ignorance.
No. Let's say until the 8th bhumi.
Okay.
Because on the 8th bhumi, they no longer have ignorance, right?
Okay.
So
But between those in that range, those persons have ignorance, but they are no longer polluted with ignorance. Is that
right? What about meditative equipoise on emptiness? Are they polluted by ignorance at that point?
Not during meditative equipoise on emptiness. That's right.
Rachel's got a thought.
Yeah, I see it the opposite. I see it as that the having of ignorance means that you have it kind of completely, and that if you are polluted by it, it's coming and going. The pollution is coming and going, and it's not completely gone, but it's not completely having it. So it's like you're possessed. When you possess ignorance or you have ignorance, you are not even an Arya being.
Oh, is that right? Okay. That's your take.
No, that's just how I'm seeing it.
Yeah. So I think in general, you have to excuse my having so many pairs of glasses here, as you recognize. So for instance, when we talk about bodhicitta, when a person is in meditative equipoise on emptiness, do they have bodhicitta? What do you think, Stephen? You're nodding yes.
Well, I'm going to say if they have uncontrived bodhicitta, that's a main mind. And so even though they're in meditative equipoise on emptiness, they still have bodhicitta.
Oh, yeah. But it's not manifest.
But it's dormant.
So, yeah. So there are questions about whether something is possessed, being dormant, or manifest. There's all sorts of questions like this, but generally having or being, how did Jeffrey, what did,
Polluted versus having.
having, and polluted versus having, or yeah. So having, is that how Jimpa translates it also?
He says tainted. It needs to be understood in terms of cognitions tainted by ignorance.
Okay. Okay, so we're talking about two different things here. So if you have ignorance, if you're a Bodhisattva Arya on one of the first 7 bhumis, you still have ignorance in your mind stream. It has not been fully abandoned. But there are periods when your mind stream is in meditative equipoise on emptiness, direct realization of emptiness, and it is not tainted by or polluted by ignorance. In those states, the ignorance is not manifest, so it's not polluting or tainting your perception, so you're able to have a direct perception of emptiness. Okay, let's read again what Jeffrey's translated for that section. Also, Chandrakirti's statement that the nature, emptiness, does not appear in any way to those having ignorance is in consideration, or sorry, in the following, is considering the following context. Emptiness does not appear to consciousness polluted with ignorance or tainted by ignorance. When it's untainted by ignorance, emptiness does appear. And then he has in parentheses, it is not in consideration of persons having ignorance. Because people that have ignorance, say bodhisattvas on the first 7 bhumis, they still have ignorance. Emptiness does appear to them in some context. It doesn't always appear to them, but emptiness does appear to them directly in meditative equipoise. And the reason for that is since he asserts, Chandrakirti asserts that superiors, Arya beings, on the 1st through 7th grounds, who have not fully abandoned ignorance, directly realize suchness, in other words, emptiness. Right? Ladybug. Also, because learner superiors, so that would include not only bodhisattvas, but here at solitary realizers who have not yet become arhats, or bodhisattvas who have not yet become Buddhas, learner Aryas, pristine wisdom, subsequent to meditative equipoise, and a common being's viewing consciousness of suchness are polluted with ignorance and its predispositions. Because of that, emptiness does not directly appear to those consciousnesses, but it must be asserted that in general, ultimate truth, or in other words, emptiness, does appear to those consciousnesses. Okay, before I go to the note, Sean has a very important question to ask.
I'm just wondering if that first part of that statement where it's distinguishing the people that emptiness does not appear to consciousness polluted with ignorance and is not in consideration of persons having ignorance. I'm not seeing that as this, they're both talking about Aryas, because the person that it doesn't is not a consideration at all is the person who doesn't understand the ultimate, that there is the ultimate nature is emptiness.
Okay, let's read that section again. So I'll read Jeffrey's translation. also Chandrakirti's statement that the nature, in other words, emptiness, does not appear in any way, or Jimba's translation, never appears, doesn't appear in any way to those having ignorance, is in consideration that emptiness does not appear to consciousnesses, plural, polluted with ignorance. So do you take issue with that?
I think that's where he's talking about the Aryas, that they do experience the emptiness in meditation, but it doesn't appear outside of meditation. And so on some level, they're not assenting to it as much as perhaps the other people, that it doesn't even, like, it's not even a consideration. Emptiness isn't even a consideration in the person having ignorance. So the Aryas
Well,
obviously have a consideration of emptiness because they know about it through meditation, but these other people don't have a consideration of it at all.
here the word consideration is in Jimba's translation is understood in terms of. Consideration is not talking about the state of mind that's considering. You shouldn't think that that word in Jeffrey's translation is talking about. That's why I've paused there. Chandrakirti's statement that the nature, emptiness, does not appear in any way to those having ignorance should be understood in the context of, rather than using the word consideration. I think you were thinking the word consideration was talking about the people considering emptiness. It's not talking about that. Is in the following context: emptiness does not appear to consciousnesses polluted with ignorance. So, for instance, ordinary beings who have not realized emptiness, emptiness does not appear to them because their mind is polluted by ignorance. They have ignorance, and their mind is polluted by ignorance at that point. It is active, it is manifest. Okay. So let me read this note at the end of that sentence there in Jeffrey's text. This is page 240, note B, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? Yeah, I think so. The change glasses again. These big glasses were offered to me by.
I just think they were still, like, it's still in reference to that two truths, though, because like the fact that we call conventional truths are only conventional truths to people that haven't examined things for emptiness, whereas those that do, they know that those conventional truths aren't really truths.
That's not correct. That very point is going to be coming up here. People who've realized emptiness, like say bodhisattvas on the first 7 bhumis, they are, because they still have ignorance in their consciousness, it can manifest. They do not see those things as mere conventionalities. They see them as conventional, as truths. They see them as truths occasionally when the mind, when the ignorance arises. So let me just read the note B here. So what is note B? This is in the end of that sentence. The sentences tend to be long here. Also, because a learner superior's pristine wisdom, their gnosis, subsequent to meditative equipoise, so their post-meditation wisdom, and as well as a common being's viewing consciousness of suchness, are polluted with ignorance and its predispositions. Because of those facts, emptiness does not directly appear to those consciousnesses. but it must be asserted that in general, emptiness or ultimate truth does appear to those consciousnesses. So that's the context of this note. This note says, there are conceptual consciousnesses explicitly realizing emptiness among a learner superior's pristine wisdom subsequent to meditative equipoise. Again, many words there we can abbreviate. There are conceptual consciousnesses explicitly realizing emptiness as opposed to what? Explicitly is in contradistinction to what?
Inferentially.
Implicity.
Implicitly or indirectly, right? So you can say, for instance, from the Hinayana point of view, the meditation on emptiness views the five impermanent aggregates. That's what it's explicitly realizing, and implicitly or indirectly, it's realizing that the person is empty of. He doesn't. They don't realize that selflessness directly or explicitly. They understand it indirectly or implicitly. So it's similar kind of terminology. There are conceptual consciousnesses explicitly realizing emptiness. That means they've gotten, it's actually, therefore, that it has to appear to them. Among a learner superior's, a learner Arya's gnosis subsequent to meditative equipoise. So in post-meditation, the learner superiors, the learner Arya's gnosis, there are conceptual consciousness that explicitly realize emptiness. So that means it has to appear to them. Also, a common being's viewing consciousness of suchness is necessarily a conceptual consciousness explicitly realizing emptiness. The basic rule is that any object explicitly understood must appear to that consciousness. So if it's an implicit realization, what you're realizing doesn't have to appear to your consciousness. But if it's an explicit realization of something, like say explicit realization of emptiness, emptiness has to appear to that consciousness. Okay, I'm just checking here. I find these bones haven't been soaked. We're trying to soak them. These are dry bones. What do you think? You have to really, I sometimes when I find these kind of problematic things, I must have been a cow in my previous life, I think. So I have to lay down, close my eyes, go to my room where the drapes are drawn and everything, and just sort of think about this in that context. Laying down sometimes helps. That I remember in the sutras, when someone was criticizing one of the monks for laying down a lot, the Buddha said that in a previous life he was a cow, and that was his normal mode of relaxing. So some of these things are really, there's so many different factors you have to keep in mind at the same time. If you're someone who's been a human in more lifetimes than I, maybe you could just sit in meditative equipoise and, keep all these things together. But I sometimes have to have some aid like that. So is this making some sense now? With that note? Okay, let's read a little bit further. Okay. Now from Jimpa's translation, understood thus, understood in the way that we just explained, Chandrakirti's statement that therefore conventional truth is defined on the basis of afflicted ignorance which is one of the factors connected with cyclic existence, quote unquote, or as Jeffrey translates, so again, he's referring this to Chandrakirti's Bhasham. In that way, respectively, obscurational truths are posited through the force of afflicted ignorance. Jimpa says on the basis of afflicted ignorance, through the force of afflicted ignorance that is included within the 12 links of dependent arising of cyclic existence. So what's this talking about? Anyone have an idea? John, do you have an idea? Obscurational truths or conventional truths. Jimpa translates it as conventional truth. Jeffrey's saying obscurational truth. Are posited, or Jimpa says defined, through the force of the afflictive ignorance, or Jimpa says on the basis of afflicted ignorance, which is one of the factors connected with cyclic existence. So this is talking about the first link, ignorance. So what does that mean? That conventional truth is defined or posited through the force of afflicted ignorance. Does afflicted ignorance posit conventional truth?
Does it posit conventional truth? Well, it posited through the force. It says by the Tibetan says through the power of literally.
Yeah.
Monkey. Right. So
right. So Jeffrey had said through the
doesn't say posited like in any, I don't think, does it? Or is it say positive? Maybe it does.
It says that
number shock.
Sipe Yaki Tupe Ngumon Chengi Marikpa Dan
Marikbe Wangi.
Wangi.
Yeah, and then Shago, right, is positive. That is there. So
yeah, that it's at the end of the sentence. Yeah. So what does that mean? Okay, you're just trying to think it now. Paul, do you have is that clear to you what that's talking about?
It's clear to me that he's making a reference to the 12 links.
Right. That part, yeah. I was talking.
If I understood the two different presentations of the 12 links in Abhidharma better, I might know what he was saying.
Well, yeah, that's not so much the issue here. It says that indicates that the ignorance that grasps phenomena is truly existent, known as grasping at the self-existence of persons and of phenomena, is understood to be the link of ignorance within the 12 links of dependent origination. It is not held to be an obscuration to knowledge. It is not said to be a shadib, but it is a nyodib. All right, so that's important. But conventional truth is defined on the basis of afflicted ignorance, or as Jeffrey says, in that way, respectively, obscurational truths are posited through the force or the power of afflicted ignorance that is included within the 12 links of dependent arising of cyclic existence. He asserts that I'm reading Jeffrey now. He asserts that the ignorance apprehending phenomena to be truly established, renowned as a consciousness apprehending a self of persons and of phenomena, is the ignorance that is the first of the 12 links of dependent arising, and therefore he does not assert that it is an obstruction to omniscience, but is an afflictive obstruction. Okay, so why is he bringing this up? He says immediately after that, this is in Jeffrey's translation. So in the Bhasham, immediately after the other statements that were quoted for the Bhasham, Chandrakirti's auto commentary. He says, in that way, respectively, obscurational truths are posited through the force of the afflictive ignorance that is included within the 12 links of dependent arising of psychic existence. What does that mean to be posited through the force of afflicted ignorance? Does that mean that afflicted ignorance posits them? What do you think, Stephen?
Well, in order to have an obscurational or conventional truth, you must have ignorance. If you don't, and if you've abandoned ignorance and you're on the pure grounds, then you don't see things as conventional truths. You see them as mere conventionalities.
Oh, well, Lama Khapa would smash you saying that.
Smashed by the best.
Yeah, right. It's good. If you're going to be smashed, might be smashed by Lama Khapa. So he says a little bit later, where does he say? Anyway, he says, just before we start talking about the special, I can't find it right now. So for the Aryas on the pure grounds, the Bodhisattvas on the pure grounds, let's take them, and the Arya and the Arhats, the hearer and solitary realizer Arhats. Phenomena appear to them as not being true. So they apprehend them as mere conventionalities, yet it would be absurd to say that they don't realize them as being obscurational truths or as conventional truths, because they do recognize them as existing, and all phenomena either have to be ultimate truths or conventional truths. So Lama Tsongkhapa points that out. The people who say that they are only mere conventionalities are wrong. Anyway, we'll come to that a little bit later, quite soon. So let's see. Maybe this is a good place to stop. Hence he asserts that ignorance apprehending phenomena to be truly established, which is renowned as a consciousness apprehending a self of persons and a self of phenomena, is the ignorance that is the first of the 12 links of dependent arising, and therefore he does not assert that it is an obstruction to omniscience, but that it is an afflictive obstruction. Okay. So I think we're going to stop there. Let me just see, where does that?
But does that not imply that conventional, or how does he word it?
Go on.
I'm trying to find where it is. So things that are not held to be or things that are held to be obscurations to knowledge are not conventional truths?
No, it's saying that the ignorance that grasps its phenomena as truly existent is a delusion, is a nyonman, is a nyondip. What nyondip means, afflicted obscuration or klesha avarana, as opposed to an obstruction to omniscience. One of the lower tenets, say this is some of this, grasping to true existence is not a delusion, it doesn't have to be eliminated to achieve liberation, that it is an obstruction to omniscience. So here he's pointing out that it is not held to be an obstruction to knowledge, to be a shadib. Right? Okay.
But that seems like it verifies my point, though, because it's saying the conventional truths, it's distinguishing conventional truths from the obscurations to knowledge.
No, it's not talking about conventional truths there. It says conventional truths are defined on the basis of afflicted ignorance. That's one statement, or by the force of afflicted ignorance. I've left dangling there for you to investigate. What does that mean? Are conventional truths posited by afflicted ignorance? So something subtle going on there. We'll talk about on Monday and next class, which is one of the factors connected with cyclic existence. So that's a quotation from Chandrakirti. So from that, Lama Khapa extracts the sort of the implication in this context that indicates the implication of that is that the ignorance that grasps at phenomena as truly existent is understood to be the link of ignorance within the 12 links of dependent origination. It is not held to be an obstruction to knowledge, an obstruction to omniscience. Yeah, not clear, right? To you.
It's not at all clear to me either.
Okay.
There's one way you could think it, that in one sense that it's saying without, then without ignorance, there is no conventional truth. There are no obscurational truths. Because
you're sort of agreeing with Stephen or Sean, right? Without ignorance, there's no conventional truths. But
that's what it seems to be saying, like on the face of it. But I don't.
So that's the point. That's the point that I'm saying is a little bit subtle. So it says conventional truths are defined, or more precisely, posited by the force of afflicted ignorance. So that means that the afflicted ignorance has to be there to perceive conventional truths, or to say that these things are true. In this perspective of that ignorance, these things are true, and therefore, because they're true conventionally. They're true for that obstructed mind, not true, say, for the Aryas, the Arya Bodhisattvas on the pure grounds. They're not true because they've abandoned ignorance. Yet they still recognize them as obscurational truths, as conventional truths, that people that, they know that, because what that means is that they're true for a mind that has afflictions. It's not as though the Aryas and the pure grounds don't realize that sentient beings
aware of that.
Have afflictions. They know that. And so they know that for those people, those are true, but they themselves know that they are not true at all.
Right. I'm still going to have to go to bed wondering why Stephen is going to be smacked about.
What was Stephen doing? Is washing his hands. What were you? Did you come to some conclusion there, Steve?
No, not at all. I'm still, I'm going to have to do some rumination.
Yeah, maybe go to bed like I do.
Toss and turn,
don't go to
sleepless
sleep.
nights, waiting until Monday.
Okay, so we'll talk a bit more about that. So let's end here. So that we're going to we'll review that, of course, next class, but the next class will start with the statement that conventional truth is defined on the basis of such ignorance. Grasping at true existence indicates how such conventional facts are characterized as true from the point of view of a specific perspective. So that may clear it up a little bit. So if you read ahead, if our host would like to put up the concluding prayers. Due to these virtues, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all migrators without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen in my mind stream and in the mind stream of others, may it arise and grow. And may that which has arisen, that bodhicitta which I've already given rise to, not diminish, but increase more and more. I think there's the long life, the prayer for the quick recognition of the reincarnation of Lama Zopa. Is that on that page, or is that on another text? Okay. Do you have that?
No, I'm sorry. Let me see if I have it, that I can pull it up.
Who else might be able to pull it up for us? Doris, do you have it? Or Anna? Can you put it up?
I have it, but Karen would have to make me co-host in order for me to just.
But Anna has it. She says she's co-host, I think, right?
She would have to be made co-host.
I thought she was already co-host.
Karen, can you make me co-host? I made you full host.
Okay. Oh gosh. Here we go. Okay. It's good to be. There we go. Precious teacher, peerless teacher, an assembly of children of the victorious ones. In addition to that, Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang, the conqueror Losang Drakpa, Lama Tsongkhapa, who is the spiritual father to his two disciple sons, as well as your lineage, all objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please bestow now the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In upholding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable venerable Guru, to you I make request. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for both the welfare of the victorious one's teachings and mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace, at which point I lost hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truths of the oceanic blessings of the triple gem, 3 jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta, mind generation of the bodhisattvas, who are called the offspring of the victorious ones, the children of the victorious ones. Through those truths, by that power of truth, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. And finally, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateway for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, moved by mercy, illuminating spiritual friends, please live long and stable lives. As you can see in this one, where earlier when we were talking about the etymology of the Tibetan word lotsowa, and John pointed out it was loka chakshu, I think, eyes, the eye of the world. So similar here, eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures. So thank you very much for your attention. Those of you who have the bandwidth in your lives to come on Monday, we'll have a class then. If you're in Europe, is Nadine already left? Have to remind her, I think oh, Nadine's here. Has the time already changed? I think your time changed even before ours. Ours will change next week, right? Or tomorrow.
No, ours will change tonight.
Ours will change tonight. So those of you yeah, keep track of it. We'll have our regular discussion group on Monday, but I look forward to seeing you again Saturday to chew some more bones.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Take care. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Be
Thank
safe.
you,
Wear-
Venerable George.